Dr. Rose Moten, to help us with this domestic violence issue. Doctor, welcome to the Warren Ballentine Show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, I have to start off by asking you this. Yesterday we were talking about domestic violence, and I did some research and found out that this isn't just an adult thing. This isn't happening with teenage children as well. Why is this such a big epidemic in our country right now?
Unfortunately, and it's not just right now, Warren. It's always been an epidemic. I just think with incidents such as the Chris Brown, Rihanna incident, it's getting more attention and more press time. But it's always been an issue, especially with teenagers as well.
Now, one of the things that and I'm in no way am I expert on this. I'm very much a novice. But one of the things that I think about, even as growing up as a child, as a little boy growing up, we were allowed to be a little bit more aggressive than our sisters were. And is that part of the reason why some of these men grow up and do some of the things that they're doing?
The biggest risk factor in if a man is going to grow up and actually be an abuser is if he witnessed that actually growing up in his household from his parents or primary caregivers or through uncles or grandfathers. So it's not just an indication of aggressiveness. Boys by nature, which is arguably always a arguable topic there, but by nature tend to be more aggressive, but that does not mean that they will be abusers when they become adults.
Now, let me ask you this, Doctor. If somebody's in a abusive relationship, whether it's physical or mental or even economically, how do they find themselves getting out of that situation? What are the steps necessary to get out of that?
Yeah, and it's not an easy process. And even as a psychologist, I've counseled women who educationally were highly educated women and even economically could hold their own economically, but it's still such a difficult process to get out because it's so pervasive psychologically. Usually the abuse takes place over several years, over numerous years, and it's really played a detrimental role on the woman's self-esteem. And so it's not a factor. For us looking in from the outside, we're looking like, you have the money, you have the resources, you have the support, get out. But it usually is a process, and it usually will start with the woman seeking help, typically psychological help, getting that support system in place, reaching out to support groups that can help her, women who've gone through the process before, so she doesn't feel like she's a novice out there experiencing this all alone. She understands that, unfortunately, this is a phenomenon that many hundreds of thousands of women have encountered.
Now, when you look at the women who've encountered something like this, is it because they're growing up in broken family homes and they think that they need to go through this, or they saw their dad doing this? I mean, what is the mindset of somebody who's grown up seeing this? Do they think that this is the norm? Because I had one of my listeners call up yesterday and said, look, I've dated women who said if I didn't hit them, I didn't love them.
And that's so sad. That's so sad. But you hit on something there that is it's shown in research. Women who witness their mothers being abused are more likely to go into relationships with an abusive mate. It's almost like these people attract each other, like magnets toward each other, because it's not like the first time you meet a person, he's going to say, hey, I'm an abuser. But for some reason, they tend to attract mates who are going to be more likely to abuse them. What I've even found in my practice is that I'll have women that have witnessed their mothers being abused as young girls, and the majority of these women will end up in relationships where, unfortunately, they are victims of domestic violence. But there is still a percentage of these women who go into relationships and they become the perpetrators themselves.
Now, and I'm glad you hit on that, because I was just about to go there with you. I had an uncle who, he's passed now, but when I was a teenager, his significant other, and the best way I can say it is she would beat his ass. I mean, it wasn't even but he wouldn't fight back. He would never fight back. She would beat him, and, my mom and them would get so mad they would want to go beat her up. And why do men allow, because I'm the same way in this sense. I'm not going to fight a woman. I will walk out the door. I will leave, but I got enough sense that once you hit me, you ain't got to ever worry about seeing me again.
Yeah. And, Warren, it's usually a process, like I mentioned before, be it the man as a perpetrator or the woman as a perpetrator, it's calculated, where they chip away little by little in the beginning at the victim's self-esteem, and they convince the victim at a certain point that it's their fault. It's their fault that they forced this person to lose control and hit them.
So they're conditioning them. They condition them over time.
It's definite conditioning. It's so pervasive and psychological. That's why it requires so much work to get a person out of this web, because it's nothing that's so simple as to say, okay, this person hits you, it's wrong, walk away. It's a conditioning that takes place. And we know conditioning, when it occurs, it's strong, like it's set in stone. But anything learned or conditioned can be unconditioned as well. So that's the hope that we have there in these situations of domestic violence, that anyone can get out. Anyone can get out, but the right conditions have to be there that allows a person to recognize that they don't have to put up with this, and that there are support systems and there's resources available that they can turn to help them get out of the situation.
Now, let me ask you this, because a lot of parents don't even understand that their high school children are going through things just like this. What are some of the signs that a child may be going through this and you not knowing it as a parent?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that. I can remember myself in high school having a friend who was actually a victim of domestic violence from her boyfriend. And I actually witnessed it one day, and it came to the teacher's attention. And when this young girl's mother called me to inquire about it, the young girl, called, and she's like, it didn't happen like that, did it? She's questioning me, and I'm like, no, it happened exactly the way they're saying it. So she was even convinced at that young age that, she has to keep this a secret. So when you see your daughters, or you see because we don't want to leave the men out, because men, they're a smaller percentage, but they can be victims as well. But when you see isolation, like all of a sudden your teenager is not hanging around the same set of friends that they typically hang around, because a perpetrator wants to isolate the victim. A perpetrator does not want the victim to have a support system. So all of a sudden, the friends that you saw your teenagers usually around every day or talking to on the phone regularly, they are not talking to these individuals anymore, and they're spending the majority of their time with the perpetrator. When you see controlling behavior that your child is being subjected to, or even bruises that come up unexpectedly that can't be explained, or they are giving a really lame excuse. I fell. And that it's very difficult to get a bruise by falling in the particular place where that bruise is. If it's around the wrist, or if it's in areas that it's very easy for a person to grab onto, or if it's a sign of someone striking out. These are things you definitely want to look to.
Now, let me ask you this. Is there hotlines, is there websites that people, if somebody's in a listening audience right now who's a victim and need help, where could they turn right now?
Yeah, the national hotline for domestic violence, the number is 800-799-7233.
Give it to us one more time. Give it to us one more time.
Yeah, 800-799-7233.
Now, go ahead.
And they actually receive more than 20,000 calls a month. 20,000 calls a month. And the thing, it's only 1/3 of domestic violence, or not even 1/3, 1/5 of domestic violence victims actually reported. Like in the Rihanna Chris Brown incident, we don't know. It's very rare.
Yeah, she didn't call the cops. Somebody else did.
Yeah, and it's very
She didn't even call the police.
That someone is going to be beaten that badly as they allege, and that's the first time it ever happened.
Right.
There's alleged reports coming out now that, friends and families had been seeing bruises over, the course of months or what have you, that they were concerned about. But typically, it's very difficult, or it's unlikely. So, in
your educated opinion, you think this has happened before? This isn't the first time that something went down with them?
Yeah, just statistically, and like you said, my educated opinion and what I know from the facts is it's highly unlikely that this is the first time. It's highly unlikely, and especially if the perpetrator is someone who's well respected in the community, or they have some sense of status. And you think about it.